How about now? Yep. Hey, we have audio on stream. Hello. Yay. All right. Yeah, sorry, we don't have audio notifications though. So thank you for the 100 bits though. I really appreciate it. I should have put the counter on the top. Oh well. All right. The alert box rather. So we recorded the chapter 9. We recorded chapter 9 for the audiobook. Now we have to do it for the podcast. Nightblade, chapter 9. Nightblade, chapter 9. Nightblade, chapter 9. Nightblade, chapter 9. Yeah, one of those should be good. The caravan rang with the shouts of people preparing to leave. Annis had a carriage near the front. Lauren balked at the sight of it, well crafted, all in stained mahogany. "I do not wish to impose on your mother's hospitality," said Lauren. "Surely she would rather ride with you alone?" But Annis only laughed and showed Lauren inside, where she found the carriage empty. "I have my own carriage," said Annis. "I do not ride in Mother's unless I have some reason to, for it is terribly boring there. Mother and Gregor speak only of the road south, while Mother and Gretchen talk of nothing but the accounting books and how much profit they have made upon the road." "Have you traveled far upon it?" Annis shrugged. This is my first journey. I do not know how far is, you might say. Only this summer has Mother consented to my presence on the caravan. I have lived upon the High King's seat all my life." Lauren gawked. The High King's seat? I've heard it is a place of wonder. Are the streets truly laid with marble? "Goodness, no," said Annis with a titter. "Only cobblestones, like..." Hello, microphone. Can you stop? Thank you. "Only cobblestones, like any city." Then her mouth twisted in doubt. "Well, like I imagine any city would be. We have only passed 2 upon the road, and one reeked with plague. Mother did not let me open my window, much less leave the carriage." Lauren shuddered. She had never known plague, but some of the village elders had told tales. A great sickness had swept through Selvin in a time before her parents were born, and the birchwood had not gone unscathed. "But I speak..." Hold on, I'm going to adjust the script. "But I speak too much of myself," said Annis. "Mother and my tutors say that is always my way. Tell me of yourself. What do you seek in Cabras?" Lauren felt her guard rise. "I come from the birchwood. It is a great forest, the greatest in Selvin." "Odd," said Annis, turning to look out the window. "I have not heard of it." "You have seen it," said Lauren. If you rode along the Melnar or the King's Road, it runs beside the road from the High King's seat until the road crosses the river." "You have seen it," said Lauren. "You have seen it," said Lauren, "if you rode along the Melnar or the King's Road. It runs beside the road from the High King's seat until the road crosses the river." "Oh, I think I remember," said Annis. Her gaze wandered out the window. Outside the window. "You could not have helped but see it," said Lauren, feeling her hackles rise. "And how did you come by that?" said Annis, pointing once again to Lauren's black eye. Lauren felt taken aback. The girl's manner was frank to the point of rudeness, her questions brief and to the bone. Rather than answer, Lauren said, "How old are you?" I have seen 12 years. Lauren smirked. Ah, still a child, then. That produced the desired effect. Annis straightened on her bench, her brows drawing together and her lips pinching in an angry scowl. I am not a child. I am nearly full grown, for most in my family do not grow tall, and I am half again... not tall. I am not a child. I am nearly full grown, for most in my family do not grow tall, and I am half again as clever as any of my tutor's other pupils. He has told me. Lauren leaned against her cushions and raised her hands, smiling easily. I meant no offense. Annis's face relaxed somewhat, but her eyes no longer wandered, as though Lauren had ceased to entertain her. Feeling more at ease, Lauren decided she might as well answer the child's question. What could it matter? Her father lay in their house far away now, no doubt nursing the wound in his thigh. As for my eye, my father gave it to me, said Lauren. Annis's mouth opened into a small O. He did not take kindly to my desire to leave home. He pursued me, and when he found me, he gave me this, and more. Lauren twisted in her seat and lifted the edge of her tunic to reveal her ribs. Bruises stood bold against the pale white of her skin. Other, older bruises shone yellow, former gifts from her father's meaty fists. Lauren pulled the shirt up higher until Annis could see the bruises that ran across her chest and all along her back. Annis squeaked and leaped across the carriage to yank Lauren's tunic down. She released the garment like a snake and withdrew, sinking into the purple cushions of the carriage seat. "What is wrong?" said Lauren. "I did not mean to frighten you." "Frighten me?" squeaked Annis. Why not just strip naked?" Lauren blinked. "What, do all the peasants of your village walk nude beneath the sun? Are you savages?" A scowl twisted Lauren's features. "I can say at least that we are not partial to insults. What is the matter? We're women both, and you are too young for courting." Annis stuck her nose in the air. "In civilized circles, we do not go around parading our bodies. It is unseemly." Lauren snorted. "Very well. I shall not trouble you with my savage customs and peasant's body." She pushed away from the bench and threw open the carriage door, striding out into the onto the grass. After a moment, the carriage door slammed shut again. Lauren walked for the rest of the day. The caravan moved in no great hurry, and so she easily kept the pace of the horses. Soon she forgot her annoyance with Annis and was able to enjoy again the sights of the strange land around her. The ridge she had crossed soon turned into a low mountain range that ran south, following the course of the road, or rather, she supposed, the road followed the mountains. Excuse me. Hey, what's up, Dred? Clundy Man, thanks for the bits. Sorry, we don't have notifications up today. It's harder to set up when I'm doing the audio recording. Oh, water. Oh, we do have chat up on the screen. I forgot that I set that up. Yay! Yay me. So the bits are showing, at least. That's a thing. Every so often, she looked back towards the caravan to see Gregor studying her from under his gleaming helm. Soon she had to make up her mind to ignore him. How could Lauren blame him for being suspicious of a mysterious girl pursued by constables? Eventually the sun neared the tops of the mountains, and the wagons pulled to a stop. Unlike at the midday meal, this time they pulled into a tight circle by the side of the road. Guards dismounted and began to erect a large purple tent amid the wagons. Lauren did not need to guess who would sleep there. She decided to head for the trees while some light remained. Damaris had offered food, but Lauren did not want to endanger her hospitality by burdening the caravan's supplies. And if Annis had spoken to her mother, they might already be inclined to see Lauren leave. But before she could set off for the woods, she heard footsteps and turned to find Annis. The girl stood there, hands clasped behind her back and gaze fixed. The girl stood there, hands clasped behind her back and gaze fixed on the ground. She looked for all the world like a village child about to be chastised. Lauren almost smirked. "I am sorry I insulted you. I did not mean it," Only we are not so free with ourselves. Only we are not so free with ourselves as you are." "No apology is necessary," said Lauren, feeling gracious as she bowed. "I should not have presumed to be so forward." Annis looked up at last. "You are not angry with me, then?" Lauren sighed inwardly. She could not help the thought that Annis would anger her again before the road ended, but she smiled. "Of course not. I make for the woods to catch myself dinner. When I return, would you sup with me?" Annis's eyes widened, as they had when Lauren first saw her. Thank you. Annis's eyes widened, as they had when Lauren first saw her. "Of course. I would be delighted." Lauren left her with a smile and made for the woods. She soon saw a squirrel and a rabbit, but both her shots went wide, and she lost one of the arrows. Then she spotted a quail just as the last light died in the sky. Her arrow flew true, and she picked up the bird to bring it back to camp. She built a small fire and began plucking, but before she had the quail ready for the fire, she felt a presence in the darkness. She looked up and squinted. Damaris's dark face appeared, her eyes glinting in the flickering flames. Damaris, 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 Damaris. Damaris, 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 Damaris. "Did you find our provisions unsatisfactory?" said the merchant. "I could have had one of my men fetch a bird, if you wished." Lauren laid the quail down and stood quickly to bow. "No, of course not, my lady. I did not want to impose upon your generosity any more than I already have. Free passage south is a great gift, and I would not ask you to feed me as well." Yet you do not even take our passage in truth, for you spent much of the day on your feet." Lauren blushed, feeling somehow off balance. Had she delivered some insult? These people had strange customs, and she seemed to break them at every turn. "I have never been in a carriage before, and I found the motion disorienting." She did not think it would help to say that Annis had called her a savage. "I shall tell the driver to be more gentle, then." Damaris's voice betrayed no emotion, yet Lauren somehow felt that she had angered the merchant. "I will happily ride tomorrow, my lady." Lauren bowed low. "And I apologize if I offered any insult." "Oh, do not trouble yourself. Now, Annis has taken it into her head to sup with you. I told her that you likely wished to be left alone." Annis appeared behind her mother's legs like a goblin leaping from the dark. "She does not, mother. She asked me." "She would be most welcome," said Lauren quickly. "I did offer, but I would never think to pull her from your company." Oh, my friggin' phone notifications today. Oof. Here, I need to figure out something on this. No, that's not going to help. Nope. I'm going to put it here so I will hear it. Otherwise, I'm going to miss it, and then I'm going to hear it while I'm editing, and I'm going to be pissed. Yay for chores, Bumblebee. I think it is good for her to spend time with others. Indeed, I often have trouble prying her from my side. The merchant's stern look seemed to melt. I think it is good for her to spend time with others. Indeed, I often have trouble prying her from my side. The merchant's stern look seemed to melt away, and a warm smile spread across her features. Rather than feel reassured, Lauren felt even more unsettled. Annis squealed and leaped forwards, sitting on the ground beside the fire without a second thought for her fine purple dress. Damaris inclined her head and then turned to vanish into the darkness. "What did you catch?" said Annis, leaning forwards. "It is a quail. It will be ready soon." She picked the bird back up and resumed her plucking. "Are you a good hunter?" "I can feed myself, but I learned from a boy in my village whose skill dwarfed my own. He can bring a stag down at full sprint. With memories of Chet came a lance of pain. Lauren stopped talking and bowed her head over the quail, pretending to work. Annis did not seem to notice. "Tell me about your forest. Did you like it there? I have only ever seen the seat. This is my first time in the wilderness." Lauren would hardly have called this tame land a wilderness, but she thought better than to say so. "The forest was a good home to me," she said, "but the people within it were less kind, my parents notably so." Annis's face fell. "Were they very cruel? They seem like the wicked step-parents you hear of in stories." Lauren snorted. In stories, the parents lock the daughter in the child in a high tower to keep her from true love. In stories, the parents lock the child in a high tower to keep them from true love. They do not beat the daughter for failing to chop enough logs. They do not whip the daughter for mussing her dress. Lauren's fingers had grown tight around her hunting knife. She forced them to loosen. "How could you stand it?" said Annis. "I think I would have gone mad." Lauren smiled. She looked into the darkness to either side of her as though searching for an eavesdropper. "I might have done. Did you ever think of that, my little lady?" She flipped her knife over the back of her palm and drops of blood spattered the dirt. Annis gave a little squeal. "How did you learn to do that? I wish I could flip a knife." Lauren chuckled and turned back to the quail. She carved off long strips of its flesh and impaled them on sticks she had gathered from the ground, and then propped the sticks up to cook over the fire. "That little trick and a fair few stories I learned from an old man named Bracken." "Bracken?" Annis cocked her head and narrowed her eyes. Lauren raised her hands. "I doubt he gave his true name. He used to say that true names held power, and that only fools gave theirs away. He was old when my parents were children, and he came to our village in autumn every year. He carried a great sack filled with metal pans and hunting knives and old boots. He would trade them in the village, but never for coin. Always he traded for food or trinkets or a nice strong bow." "A peddler?" Lauren cocked her head. "I do not know that word." "He was a peddler," said Annis, drawing up straight and puffing out her chest in pride. "They move from town to town, selling and trading. They often tell stories as well. Tall as a peddler's tale, we say on the seat." Lauren shrugged. "Well, Bracken told tales, true enough, simple tales of things happening in the Nine Lands today, and grand tales of knights and dragons from far-away yesteryears. When I went out to fell trees, often he would follow, sitting in a crook or hollow to spin his stories." "I love stories of dragons," said Annis. "Is it true they are still to be found out in the world?" Lauren gave a little smile. "Truly? Dragons? I did not take you for one who sought to be a mighty warrior." Annis smiled. "My tutors said the same thing. Soon I turned it into a joke and said that I only liked the dragons because they had so much gold, just like my family." Lauren chuckled. I like a quick wit. Buh. My throat. I like a quick wit. But come, tell me, did you have favorite stories? Did you like to hear of the princesses who overcame their Did you like to hear of the children who overcame their wicked step-parents? You must have hoped to escape as they did." Lauren sat silent for a moment. She feared it unwise to speak of her purpose with just anyone, but Annis was only a child. Who would believe her? And if they did, what then? Lauren had done nothing wrong. Yet. She leaned forwards and pulled the sticks of quail from the fire. "Have you heard..." Excuse me. Oh my gosh. "Have you heard the tale of Menet the Mist?" Annis took a stick, her eyes alight, and leaned back to wrap her arms around her knees. She took a large bite and chewed noisily. "No? Who was he?" "There never lived a greater thief than Menet the Mist," said Lauren, trying to mimic Bracken's voice when he began a tale. "They say he struck a..." Thank you, microphone. Keeps doing this staticky thing. They say he struck a deal with the shadows themselves. He wove them into a cloak to melt into any darkness and appear in another shadow whenever he wanted, even in the vaults of cruel kings and tyrants." "Ooh," said Annis. "He was a good man, then?" "Not always," said Lauren, shaking her head. "He grew up poor and barefoot in the streets of some city, I forget which. He fell in with cutthroats and brigands, and when he grew older he lived as a highwayman, waylaying caravans, like this one." Annis looked over her shoulder into the night. Bracken would have been proud. But one day, as he and his men rode through the land in search of more plentiful bounty, they came upon a village. The king in that land treated his subjects poorly, and met any insolence with fire and sword. Some man in the village had delivered insult, and so the king sent his army to burn the place to ashes. Some of Menet's men wanted to ignore the fire. Others wanted to steal what they could, but Menet spurred his horse into the town, for he had heard a babe's cry. He found her in a house in the middle of the village, her parents having fled or lying cold in the dirt. Menet leaped through a window and scooped her up, but fire blocked his escape. That is when he pleaded with the shadows he had befriended all his life, and they enveloped him. The house collapsed, and Menet's men thought he had died. But then he stepped from the shadows of the trees, the babe in his arms. Terrified, all the men fled. Menet had... Hey, what's up, Twitch? Yeah. What's up, Twitch? What's up, Miak? I read your thing. Yeah, it's kind of annoying, Miak. But we soldier on. Menet had finished his days as a highwayman, Menet had finished his days as a highwayman, and he turned his talents to doing good. First he stole the king's gold and brought it to the villagers who had lost their homes, repaying them 10 times for the damage. Then he traveled across the land, seeking other wrongs and turning them right. If a nobleman plotted the death of his lord, he might find his private letters taken and constables soon knocking at his door. If one of the 9 kings plotted rebellion against the High King, Menet would know, and the traitor would find the other If one of the 9 kings plotted rebellion against the High King, Menet would know, and the traitor would find the other lands united against him. "I would wager that he slipped his sharp blades into more than a few backs as well," said Annis. Lauren shook her head quickly. No, Menet never took a life. He preferred cleverness to strength, speed to skill with a blade. No one could bring him to a fight. They found themselves outmaneuvered first, their weapons vanished, their men unwilling to battle. Menet held that only kings could judge, and then only if justice lay on their side. And so when they abandoned justice, Menet turned it upon them, and even then he refused to swing its righteous sword. He never saw it as his place. Annis sat in silence for a moment, chewing her quail. Then, in a small voice, she said, Do you mean to find Menet, then?" Lauren stared at the flames. "He lived many and more a yesteryear ago. No, the world has not seen his like in an eon. But when Bracken told me those tales, they stayed in my mind. And whenever father grew angry and struck me, when my mother shrilled and pinched and locked me in a cupboard, I remembered Menet. I remembered that he did more good with his mind and his words than any king with a mighty sword and an army at his back. I remembered that he did more good with his mind and his words than any king with a mighty sword and an army at his back. My father seemed weak then, my mother foolish, and I hoped that one day I could escape and become the kind of person they should have been." Annis considered that. "Where is this Bracken now?" 3 years ago, he stopped coming." Ugh. "I am Twitch, fear me. All fear the mighty Miak Twitch. Twitchak. Miach." "3 years ago, he stopped coming. He must have died. He was very old." The air dropped to silence again. Lauren realized that she had not yet touched the quail, and Annis had eaten nearly half of it. "Are you going to eat all my hard-won bird?" Annis smirked and took another bite. "Only if you refuse to." Lauren picked up a stick, eating without seeing the food in her fingers. She could see only the fire, the red shape of it leaping up and down, swaying with every gust of wind. Chapter 10. Chapter 10. Chapter 10! You may remember me from such previous chapters as Chapter 9, Chapter 8, and Chapter 7. And let's not forget Title 11, Bankruptcy. Oh my God. Ugh. Chapter 10. Chapter 10. One of those is good. Podcast version. Nightblade, Chapter 10. Nightblade, Chapter 10. Nightblade, Chapter 10. After they ate, Lauren tried to find a place to sleep, but it felt strange to lie in firelight surrounded by strange guards with long blades. After a time she rose and took herself beyond the line of wagons. Then her head rested easily upon the ground, and she soon fell asleep. The next morning dawned bright and early, and Lauren woke before most in the camp. She felt no surprise to see Gregor had risen earlier still, and as soon as she stood his gaze snapped to her. She gave him a little wave. He did not so much as blink. The caravan seemed to take an eternity to get moving, and Lauren nearly screamed from impatience. But eventually the drivers mounted their seats and spurred the horses south. Lauren had grown somewhat bored with the countryside, so she spent her time inspecting the caravan instead. The 2 carriages led the way, followed by a dozen wagons of varying sizes. The 2 biggest wagons had 8 wheels each and were nearly as wide as the road. Lauren let her course run back and forth across the column, peering into the backs of the wagons. She wondered how many of them hid packages swaddled in brown cloth. What could be so valuable that Damaris would hide it from the constables? Something outside the king's law, no doubt, but Lauren had no faintest idea of what that could be. Annis tried walking with her, but she soon tired. "I do not know how you do this for hours and hours," she said, cheeks puffing in and out with each breath. "I can scarcely keep pace with the wagons. The drivers hardly touch their reins." "The horses seem not to need it," said Annis. Soon she abandoned Lauren and retired to her carriage. After some hours had passed, Damaris emerged and mounted a horse that Gregor brought to her. She rode beside the caravan, sometimes spurring to a gallop and ranging ahead at the edge of eyesight, sometimes content to walk her mount beside the wagons. Wherever she went, Gregor came close behind on his own steed. Lauren watched with interest. After some time, Damaris turned her horse towards Lauren. She reined in a few feet away, while Gregor sat just behind her, his eyes never leaving Lauren's face. "You seem quite interested in our horses," said Damaris. Lauren flushed. "Where I come from, no one owns a steed for riding, but only plough horses and the like. I've seen riders only rarely, though I always dreamed of owning a horse of my own." "Would you like to ride?" said Damaris. For a moment Lauren could not speak. I'm afraid I would only embarrass myself. I have never sat a saddle." "It is not so hard, and you wear the right clothing for it. You need not ride side-saddle as I do." Damaris slid from the horse's back and drew its reins into one hand as she approached. You do not look—" Lauren's heart raced as the horse neared. It stared at her with wide and gentle eyes like great pools of black water. "Come," said Damaris. "He is gentle, I promise. Give me your bow." Lauren unslung the bow from her back and handed it over, never taking her eyes from the horse. "Raise your foot." Lauren obeyed without thinking. Damaris seized her boot and placed it in the stirrup before moving Lauren's hand to the saddle horn. "Now, step up, Imagine you are climbing a rock. The horse will remain as steady as that. Lauren took a deep breath and pushed. She swung her leg up and over, and before she knew it, she had gained the saddle. She sat there for a moment, both hands wrapped around the pommel. Pommel? Am I doubting myself? Pommel is correct for a saddle, right? Why does that sound so wrong? Nope, it is correct. She sat there for a moment, both hands wrapped around the pommel, too terrified to budge. Your other foot, said Damaris. Lauren looked down. Her right boot hung loose. Flushing, she placed it in the stirrup. Thank you, she said in a small voice. Come now, I will walk with you. Damaris tugged on the reins and walked forwards. Lauren did not anticipate the sudden motion and nearly pitched backwards, but somehow she kept her balance. The saddle bounced uncomfortably against her rear. She feared that if the horse increased its pace even a little, it would send her flying. And yet she rode. She was sitting a horse for the first time in her life. You sit too high and try too hard for balance, said Damaris. Bend your back somewhat to lower your weight, and cling tighter with your thighs. Do not fear to hold the horse's neck. It will not mind unless you tug too hard on the mane. I want to add a line here for the horse people, but I'm going to restrain myself. Ugh. Damaris pushed Lauren's leg to demonstrate, and then hunched her own body lower to show her how to sit. Lauren tried it and felt the saddle's impacts lessen. Unbidden, a grin spread across her face. It is so gentle. I thought it would be harder. Well, you are only walking, after all. A smile had crept into Damaris's words. Travel at this speed grants little benefit other than freedom from your burdens. They walked that way for a while, Gregor close to Lauren's right, Damaris walking to her left. With every passing moment she felt more comfortable with the rolling motion of the horse's back. But after a time she felt a soreness creeping up her legs, the muscles growing tense and knotted. Her bottom felt bruised. I thank you greatly, my lady, said Lauren earnestly, but mayhap I shall walk again. If I stay here too long, I fear I will lose the use of my legs. Damaris chuckled. You take to horseback easily, but you might be right. It is not wise to overexert oneself on the first day. But before you dismount, you must try trotting. Gregor? The man rode up, and Damaris passed him the reins over the horse's neck. He seized them in one hand. Oh, there's that microphone again. Oh. He seized them in one hand. Lauren's stomach did a somersault. Remember, balance yourself with the horse's neck. Damaris stepped away and gave the horse's haunch a gentle slap. The horse broke into a trot, but to Lauren it seemed the earth buckled underneath her. The horse broke into a trot, but to Lauren it seemed the earth buckled beneath her. She wrapped her legs around the horse's belly and bent over its back, gripping its coat as hard as she could with both hands. Somehow she stayed on, but the saddle horn slammed into her stomach until she cried out with the pain. Gregor tugged the reins, and both horses came to a swift stop. Lauren shook for a moment, unable to move. Finally she pulled her right foot from the stirrup and swung it over. At the last moment her left boot caught in its stirrup, and she fell over backwards to the ground. She felt her face grow beet red. Damaris approached, holding out Lauren's bow. A fair effort for your first time. Do not be discouraged. No one learns to ride well in an hour, or even a day. Thank you again, my lady, said Lauren. You are too kind, but I think I will walk by the wagons now. Damaris smiled and remounted. Very well. If you are still with us tomorrow, we will try again. She and Gregor rode off. Terrified as she might have been, riding a horse had been a lifelong dream come true. Even as she winced at her aching legs, she envied Damaris as the merchant cantered away. Midday came, and the caravan halted for lunch. They moved so slowly that Lauren would have preferred... There we go. They moved so slowly that Lauren would have preferred to eat on the road, but of course such was not her place to suggest. Annis disembarked from her carriage and came to eat with her again. Lauren did not enjoy the thought of hunting with her body so sore, and so she gratefully accepted Annis's offer of food. "You looked so funny on the horse," said it. You looked so funny on the horse, sir." "I work at the general goods market in town." "You looked so funny on the horse," said Annis. "I fared much worse than you on my first day." No. "You looked so funny on the horse," said Annis. "I fared much worse than you on my first day, but then I was much younger." "Do it again," said Lauren. "I have always wanted a horse of my own." To roam the land as a wealthy thief," said Annis, a light growing in her eyes. "Riding from town to town with a bag of gold on your back. It sounds glorious." Lauren looked at Annis askance. "I recall speaking no such words. Some might call that a foolish wish, and few would see glory in it." "Oh, come now," said Annis, leaning in close and dropping her voice to a murmur. "You cannot fool me. After all that talk of Menet last night, that is your wish, is it not? To become a great righter of wrongs? I could see the light in your eyes when you spoke of it." Lauren swallowed hard and focused on her food. "Fool," she thought. Fool, she thought. She had been too free with her words, and Annis seemed less starry-eyed than... Oh, this microphone is killing me. She had been too free with her words, and Annis seemed less starry-eyed than Lauren had thought. "I desire no such thing. I think Menet used his skills honorably, but only an idiot would seek to win her fortune through thievery." "Or speak so openly about it if she did," said Annis with a wink. The girl was not half so silly as she seemed, for all her prudishness. "You thought little before you spoke, and you should guard your tongue more closely. But I am not fooled by your naysaying now, and I may be able to help with your first conquest." Annis reached into a fold in her cloak and withdrew a small leather purse. She tossed it gently in her hand, and Lauren heard the clink of coin. "What is that?" hissed Lauren. She looked up, frantically scanning for Gregor or one of his guards, but she could not see him, nor did any guard give her a second glance. "A purse. The first in a long, fruitful career for the 9 Lands' next great thief." She thrust it towards Lauren with outstretched hands. Lauren snatched the purse and threw it back. The bag slammed into Annis's chest, making her wince. "Are you mad? I am your mother's guest. What would any honorable person think of me if I stole from her? And as for you, what daughter steals from her own mother?" Annis's nostrils flared. "And you took nothing from your parents when you ran away from home?" "And you took nothing from your parents when you ran away from home, did you?" Lauren balked, unable to think of a reply. "I thought as much," said Annis. "It is a fine thief who calls another thief dishonorable. This purse is a tiny thing, one from a chest of many. No one would notice it had gone, least of all Mother. How do you think you will make your way upon the road without even a penny in your pocket?" "Your mother is kind and generous to me, and to you as well. What reason could you have to do this?" "Because," said Annis, her eyes flashing, "I wanted to come with you, but now I think I may not wish to travel beside one so stupid." The words might have stung, but Lauren's mind leaped far away in an instant. She saw herself beneath the boughs of the birchwood, Zane standing before her. "I want you to bring me with you." "That is what I feared," Zane had said. "That is what I feared," Zane had said. "No, I will not." How could she have been so foolish? Now she could see herself in Annis, too young by half, asking a favor she could not understand. But no, there was a difference. My parents had turned my life to something scarce... Ugh. My parents had turned my life to something scarcely worth living. Your mother tends to your every need, and has raised you to be no fool besides. We are nothing alike. We are more alike than you know, hissed Annis. If I do not... A shout cut her off. Both their heads snapped towards the sound. Near the front of the caravan, Lauren saw a bustle of sudden activity. What is that? She murmured. An alarm, said Annis. They have spotted someone on the road. They jumped to their feet and ran. It took them only a moment to reach the front of the caravan, where Damaris stood with Gregor looming beside her, blocking his lady from the road. Mother, what is it? Cried Annis. Struck by a thought, Lauren looked for the purse of coins, but it had vanished. Riders, said Damaris. Several of them, and led by a constable. Lauren quailed. Is it? She could not finish. One from yesterday? I cannot tell. One from yesterday? I cannot tell, but we should not take any chances. Lauren, come with me, quickly. Damaris hurried down the line of caravans. You remember the compartment set in the floor of the wagons? She said. Yes, panted Lauren, breathless from fear. I can hide there. Not the same one. Here. Damaris stopped at the fourth wagon in the line. Lauren vaulted into the back, squinting as her eyes adjusted to the darkness. Now that she knew what to look for, she spotted the edges of the panel easily. Her fingers found the crack, and she heaved it upward. The compartment held no brown cloth packages, leaving her plenty of room to lie down. Grateful, she slid into the floor and pulled the panel back over herself. It took forever before she heard the hooves upon the road. They grew louder and louder before pulling to a stop nearby. Who approaches? Gregor's booming voice shook the wagon floor. So this is a new voice, and they're only going to last until the end of the chapter. Hey, what's up, Bodegazella? Lauren balked. Bok, bok, bok. Chicken Lauren. Lorcan. Chickren. The king's servants, about his business. Is that too ridiculous? What does this guy sound like? The constable's thin, wheedling voice. Okay. Thin, wheedling voice. So that sounds appropriate. The king's servants, about his business. Lauren did not recognize the voice as either Corin... Oh, fuck's sake, this microphone. If you could just not. Lauren did not recognize the voice as either Corin or Byrne. Yet they might still be here, she reminded herself. The road seems fairly thick with constables, came Damaris's clear voice. 2 visited us only yesterday. The same who sent us, came the new voice. They seek a man and a girl, and said they saw the girl near your caravan. They told us the same, said Damaris, but we told them we had seen nothing. I have heard the tale, but then I questioned them closely, for many merchants upon the road carry goods that give the king great displeasure. To hide them, such merchants might have panels and holes within their wagons. I asked my brother constables if they had searched for such concealment, and they said they had not. They sent me to see if such might be found. Lauren's throat went bone dry. Silence lingered outside the wagon. The man spoke again at last. What say you, my lady? Must my agents break your wagons apart, plank by plank? Damaris hesitated only a moment before answering. There is no need. The girl hides within that one. Come, and I will take you to her. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, fuck's sake. Why am I... It's just nothing on my phone all day, hours and hours and hours. Actually, days in a row, nothing. And then I start recording. Texts, tweet notifications, phone calls. Suddenly I'm the most popular person in Oregon. I am going to get through the rest of this guy's lines so I don't have to remember his voice, or while I have it firmly in my head. Chapter 11. Chapter 11. Chapter 11. Chapter 11. Chapter 11. Yeah, but if I... hey, what's up, Sam? Good to see you here. My phone is what I'm using to see chat, so I won't be able to see what anybody says if I turn my phone off, is the only problem with that idea. And now we have a plane. This is good. This is fine. This is fine. This is fine. This is fine. Me. We wait for the plane. And we wait for the microphone now. Fuck's sake, are you serious? I just have 4 more paragraphs. 4 more paragraphs. No, 2. 2 more paragraphs. Just microphone, please. Please, microphone. It's probably the plane. It's probably a radio signal from the plane interfering. Chapter 11. Chapter 11. Chapter 11. Okay, in the podcast version. Nightblade, Chapter 11. Nightblade, Chapter 11. Surround the wagon! The constable's thin, wheedling voice rang out in the shrill air. Leave no... Surround the wagon! Oh my god! Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And then I get to take a break. Literally, just this paragraph. One paragraph. One paragraph. Good job, Dredd. Surround the wagon! The constable's thin, wheedling voice rang out in the still air. Leave no gap for her to escape! Lauren feared she might vomit. Lauren feared she might vomit. If she had held any illusion of walking with Damaris outside the law, that dream had now gone. She must flee as fast as she could before the searchers could surround the wagon. She flung away a wooden... Okay, and that's where I'm going to take a break. All right. I'm going to take 10 or 15 minutes off, and then I will be back in a few. Thanks for hanging out so far today, everybody. This is fun. Hey, we're back. All right, we'll pick it up from the second paragraph. Lauren feared she might vomit. If she had held any illusion of walking with Damaris outside the law, that dream had now gone. She must flee as fast as she could before the searchers could surround the wagon. She flung away the wooden panel that covered her. No one stood at the wagon's rear. She still had a chance. Just as she tensed to run, a cry of alarm sounded from outside the wagon. It was Damaris. "She has fled!" cried Damaris. "Where did she go? Gregor?" "I know not, my lady," said the captain. "My guard stood vigilant." "Vigilant as sleeping bears," snapped Damaris. "Find her, or it will go ill with all of you." Lauren stood rooted to the wagon's floor. No one stood near her wagon. What game did Damaris think to play? Lauren could not know, but she must place her faith in the merchant for the time being. Quick and quiet, she dropped back into the hidden space. Her fingers slid across the wood panel, and she winced as a splinter sank into her flesh. Silent as she could, she lowered it back into place. She was not a moment too soon. Within heartbeats, the wagon shook under heavy feet. A man climbed inside. Lauren heard shouts farther down the line. The agents of the King's Law had split up, searching the wagons in ones and twos. In a moment they would find Lauren, and then all would converge upon her. Whatever Damaris planned, Lauren hoped it would take place soon. The wood beneath her head shook with footsteps. Her breath came fast and ragged. The man grunted and heaved. The wood panel flew up to reveal her. Not the constable, but one of his riders. A gray mustache sat atop old, weathered lips, and deep lines creased his face. From cheeks to eyes. Those eyes squinted at her for a moment, and then widened. The man's chest erupted in a spray of blood, 12 inches of steel protruding from his breastbone. Lauren screamed. The man gurgled and sagged. His lifeblood sprayed forth, dousing Lauren's cloak. As he fell, she saw Gregor behind him. The giant's eyes shone cold and baleful, like the blue flame of an ancient king's funeral pyre. His boot lashed out, kicking the man towards the front of the wagon. Outside she could hear the sounds of ringing steel and terrified voices crying out in death. The wagon's canvas could not mute the screams. Lauren feared she would hear them as long as she lived. Lauren leaped up and threw off her cloak. Blood had soaked through it in places, and she could feel it pressing upon her skin. She stumbled past Gregor, who did not move a muscle. She lost her footing on the wagon's edge and crashed to the ground on her shoulder. Pain lanced through her chest. She scarcely noticed it as she rolled over onto her stomach and retched. The previous night's salted meat came up, thick and chunky and smelling of bile. She vomited until her stomach could give no more, and then she lay unmoving, except for her heaving chest. Lauren had seen death before. No one went forever without accidents. She had seen people crushed by falling oaks, or wasting away from infection after a wayward axe took a finger. But never had she seen a man murdered in cold blood, stabbed through the back. The sounds of death subsided. Gregor's guards had won before their foes knew a battle was afoot. A half-dozen corpses littered the ground. Soft footsteps drew Lauren's gaze upward. Damaris loomed. Her dark eyes found Lauren's green ones. "Whose blood stains your tunic?" Lauren looked down at herself and saw the crimson streaks. "Why would... They were King's soldiers!" Lauren tried to stand, but wobbly knees soon made her think better of it. "Aye, and with noses far too keen." "They would not have killed me. They only did their duty." Damaris's brow crinkled for a moment, and then she shook her head softly. "Oh, simple child. You think too highly of your worth if you think I played this hand for you. You are an amusing companion, but I do not risk the law's wrath for amusement only." Lauren slowly gained her feet. Gregor appeared by his lady's side in the space of a blink. His blade lay bare and blood-soaked. Lauren swayed backwards to lean against the wagon. A quiet, persistent voice. A quiet, persistent voice screamed in the back of her mind, growing ever louder. Soon she could make out the words. "Menet, Nightblade, Menet, Nightblade, Menet, Nightblade, you fool." "For what, then?" said Lauren. "For your hidden panels and your packages of brown cloth? What do you judge worth these lives? The lives of people you did not know, who may leave widows or orphans behind." Damaris rolled her eyes. In that gesture, Lauren saw a wealth of dismissal, a wide ocean of scorn and embarrassment. "The 9 lands make widows and orphans of us all in the end. The wretched and woeful are the rule, and joyous folk the exception. Not needlessly do we spill blood, I said, but I did not say we feared to or had not before." Lauren blanched. "What of me, then? Do you mean to send me back to the dark forest with them?" "Do you mean to send me to the dark forest with them?" Damaris shrugged. "Why should I?" Lauren did not know what madness seized her, but she needed to know the manner and meaning of what had happened. "I have seen this." "I have seen this." She gestured around at the corpses, though she was unable to look at them. "How could you let me live, fearing that I might reveal today's deeds?" "Do you mean to?" "Do you mean to?" Rather than fear or anger, Damaris displayed only faint amusement. Lauren said nothing. Damaris nodded as if an answer had been given. "Your wisdom is, again, a welcome surprise. If you think you could report this to the king's law and escape your own justice, you are sorely mistaken. These people died, in part, to keep my cargo safe. But, too, they died to protect you in your flight from the constables. You would face the block for that, and find your own way to the darkness below apace. None who walk shaded from the law may withstand its burning light." Lauren shuddered to hear the ghost of her own thoughts on the merchant's tongue. "Now, come," Damaris continued. "I tire of this argument and its lack of purpose. You will help rid the ground of this mess. Gregor will instruct you." Lauren's knees grew weak. "Me? I could not." "Oh, not alone," said Damaris. "Gregor's guards will manage the bulk of it, but you will help and learn something of value. Who knows but that you will need to dispose of a mess or two yourself one day. You will find it no worthless skill." Words of denial leaped to Lauren's mind. Nightblade did not murder, nor would she. But those words died under Damaris's steely glare. Instead, Lauren bowed her head, and when Gregor summoned his guards and set them to drag the corpses off, Lauren walked beside them. She watched the lifeless heads bouncing against the ground. The constable's face pinched thin and reedy. Reminding Lauren of a squirrel. A thin, pathetic mustache clung to his upper lip, and that lip sat drowned in blood, probably summoned by the man's dying coughs. His torso lay open, and slimy ropes trailed behind him in the dirt. The others wore simple clothes, no uniforms. One of Gregor's men, too, had been killed. The bodies numbered 8 in all. They were all dragged into the woods. Lauren felt grateful she did not have to help with that. But once safely ensconced in the trees, the giant's guards set about with shovels and made Lauren work as well. The summer sun soon brought on a stench, and she retched twice more before they finished. The bodies they covered with loose dirt and a blanket of leaves, but only after they had stripped the corpses of any coin. Other valuables they left in place. It seemed that the family Yeren held themselves higher than grave robbers, at least. Just before Lauren had covered the last corpse, the thin clipping of hoofbeats rang out through the tall trunks. She looked up to see Damaris atop her brown steed. Gregor went to her side and took the reins as his lady dismounted. Damaris made her way to Lauren. She had something under her arm. Come now, and try this on. I think you will find it your size. It will serve you well, and costs more than a forester's daughter might earn in a lifetime. She pulled out the thing beneath her arm and unfurled it. A black cloak fluttered in the afternoon breeze. Had Lauren not been bone-weary with grave-digging and soul-sick from the rotting bodies, she might have gone breathless. The cloak fairly shone with fine cloth, and it shimmered in the sun. Each fold caught a ray of light and absorbed it, never appearing brighter, but only growing darker. Its cowls stretched long, able to draw down almost to the wearer's chin. Lauren stood immobile. Damaris waited for a moment and then stepped forwards to drape the cloak around Lauren's shoulders. Coming around front again, she drew the cowl up. The cloak rested on Lauren's shoulders like a cloud, the cowl at once warm and pleasantly airy. She felt a light breeze kiss the back of her neck. Now I am cloaked in shadow, thought Lauren, like Menet, but with blood on my hands. There, said Damaris. It fits as though I had cut it for you myself, and you can hide that needle at your waist again. Lauren's cheeks filled with red, and her hand leaped to the dagger. She had forgotten it utterly. Just at the corner of her vision, Lauren saw Gregor. The captain looked poised to leap at a moment's notice, but she knew he would not be able to move fast enough. Lauren could draw the dagger and lay Damaris's throat open before Gregor could take his first step. But she would not. Nightblade does not murder. That was the only victory she could take from today, and she would not lose her grip upon it. Damaris relaxed. Her hand rose without warning, the backs of her fingers trailing against Lauren's cheek. Lauren looked into the merchant's eyes in wonder. Steel still showed there, it was true, but Lauren saw something else, a keen affection, a softening just around the pupils that spoke of concern. Do you think I enjoyed what happened? Said Damaris. You wrong me. One must do what one must. You will know this too if you spend much longer in this world. You will understand, and mayhap see me as wise instead of monstrous. If you spend much longer in this world, Lauren thought. She felt she might lose her gorge again, and pictured vomit splashing across Damaris's pretty leather boots. Damaris gave her a final, gentle pat on the cheek. Do not trouble yourself overmuch with this. There's that microphone again. Yay, radio signals. Damaris gave her a final, gentle pat on the cheek. Do not trouble yourself overmuch with this. Let it flow over and through you, occupying your thoughts as it must, and then let it run away. She turned and went back to her horse, mounting and riding off swiftly. Lauren turned to the men behind her. The graves lay filled and blanketed with leaves. She stared at the turned... This clicking is driving me fucking berserk. Excuse me. She stared at the turned earth with a vacant stare, imagining the dead eyes that lay beneath it. She dropped her shovel and turned for the caravan. Her cloak of shadows rippled in her wake. I think I'm only going to have enough in me for one more chapter. Chapter 12. Chapter 12. Chapter 12. Chapter 12. Chapter 12. Nightblade, Chapter 12. Nightblade, Chapter 12. Nightblade, Chapter 12. From that moment on, Lauren watched for an opportunity to escape, but Gregor hounded her like a shadow, never out of sight. It seemed that Damaris did not trust Lauren after all, despite her kind manner. Lauren's only solitude came when she went to the woods to make water. Then Gregor let her leave his sight. The first time she kept going into the woods, hoping to fade away and leave him behind. But she had only gone a few yards when she saw one of Gregor's guards between the trunks, eyes fixed upon her. They traveled south through the day, and Lauren's mind raced to determine what Damaris could want from her. She could think of nothing. Once they stopped for the night, Annis appeared as if from nowhere. Her manner seemed airy, light, unreal. "Unpleasant, that business this morning, would you not say?" Lauren paid the question no mind, hoping to ignore the girl altogether. "Still, we made good time," Annis went on. "And at least you need not fear my mother turning you in to the constables for a bounty. I think we have well moved beyond such distrust." Lauren looked over her shoulder. Gregor still stood nearby. He did not react to her gaze, keeping his stony eyes trained forwards. "What do you want?" Lauren hissed. "Want? Why, whatever do you mean?" "Leave me alone," said Lauren, putting as much... "Leave me alone," said Lauren, putting as much venom in her tone as she could. "I wish nothing to do with you." Lauren stalked off into the night, looking for a place to lay her head. Mercifully, Annis let her go. At last Lauren found a spot on the open ground, with guards in plain sight but at a distance, and laid her head upon a mound of dirt. It took her a long while before she could fall asleep, and during the night she woke often to terrifying dreams of a sword in her chest. The next day turned bleak, with heavy gray clouds covering the sky like a blanket. Unusual weather for summer, thought Lauren. The thought came dead and hollow from a distant part of her mind. A forester's daughter should heed the change in weather, but she could not find it in herself to care. Annis left her alone as they traveled, but after another day's slow journey the girl reappeared. This time she simply sat, without invitation or request, plopping down beside the tidy fire. Lauren wanted to snap at her, to shout, to tell her to get away, but she dared not. What if Annis took insult? Would Damaris have Lauren killed and dragged off to the woods to join the constable and... Would Damaris have Lauren killed and dragged off to the woods to join the constable in feeding the forest floor? So Lauren listened as Annis chattered nonsensically about this and that and the road she had traveled since leaving the High King's seat. Before long, Lauren wanted to shake the girl until her silly head came off. The evening wore on, and still Annis showed no signs of slowing her speech. As the sun's last light faded on the horizon, and Lauren thought of sleep, Annis scooted closer and grasped her wrist with a smile. "Might you tell me another tale of Menet? He sounded a wondrous man, and I wager you know more of him than just what you told me." Lauren hesitated. She had no wish to tell a story, but anything seemed preferable to listening to Annis's babbling. And mayhap a story of Menet would calm Lauren's mind. She felt ragged after a day of looking over her shoulder, wondering always if each moment... That clicking, though. Clicking, clicking, and clicking. She felt ragged after a day of looking over her shoulder, wondering always if each moment might be her last. Lauren knew one thing above all else. She must escape, and as soon as possible. Damaris must have something planned for her, and Lauren had no wish to learn of the scheme. She would find some escape, and meanwhile she must bide her time. The fire had burned low. Pushing up to her knees and finding more wood for the flame, Lauren thought at last of a tale. "Shall I tell you of the time Mennet bent iron with cloth?" Annis looked at her askance. "You must jest. Cloth cannot best iron." Lauren fanned the flames, watching as the orange glow painted Annis's chubby features. "But best it he did. One day Mennet found himself within a king's dungeon. The king knew of Mennet's cloak of shadow, and thus he bade his jailer to line every inch of the wall with torches. Without darkness to hide him, Mennet's escape seemed hopeless." Annis sat forwards. They trapped Mennet? Trapped, yes, but not for long. Mennet had many years ahead of him as the greatest thief in the land, and he would not let a wizard king stay him. Mayhap Lauren imagined it, but she thought a sharp breeze gusted. The tongues of flame danced for the moment. Both girls shuddered. "A wizard king?" Her voice cracking. Oh boy. "A wizard king?" said Annis, her voice cracking. "Yes. They still ruled in those days, many years and more before Andriana the Fearless outlawed them." Lauren reached into her bag to gather her supper. "But how could Mennet hope to stand against a wizard king? They held a dark power, or so my tutors have taught me." "They taught you well, but a dark power is nothing next to the power of darkness itself. And so they kept Mennet bathed in light. He inspected every corner of his cell, but the iron bars held firm. He could find no loose stone or crumbling mortar to aid his escape." Annis remained perfectly quiet, only leaning back to wrap her arms around her knees. Lauren paused for a moment to let the words sink in before she went on. "The Wizard King laughed to see Mennet search so earnestly for a way out. At last Mennet grew thirsty and begged a pitcher of water. The Wizard King laughed to see Mennet search so earnestly for a way out. At last Mennet grew thirsty and begged a pitcher of water. The Wizard King— What was his name?" Lauren frowned. "Whose?" "The Wizard King." "He was—" Lauren thought hard, but not for the life of her could she remember. "Bracken told me once, but I cannot recall." "Why did the Wizard King not just kill Mennet? Why hold him prisoner if he did not mean to kill him? And if he meant to kill him, why not do so at once?" Lauren gave an exasperated snort. If he killed him, how could he go on to become the most famed thief in all the land? Annis folded her arms, stubborn. "Why would the Wizard King care about that? He should have killed him. I would have killed him." Lauren saw Damaris standing there above the corpses by the wagons. Fear formed like a white-hot stone in her gut. Yes, Annis might have killed Mennet. The apple rarely fell far from the roots of its tree. She pressed on. "The Wizard King granted Mennet's request. His guards fetched a pitcher of water and a wooden cup to drink with. Mennet drank a deep gulp of the water and curled up in the corner of his cell, wrapping his arms around himself as though taken by a chill. The Wizard King soon left, bored by his new plaything. Once he was alone, Mennet rose in silence. He pulled the tunic from his back and tied it around two... He pulled the tunic from his back and tied it around two of the iron bars that held him in his cell. Then he took one of his boots, made from hard leather, and pushed it through the tunic. He seized both sides of... That clicking. He seized both sides of the boot and twisted as hard as he could. Round and round he turned the boot, until the tunic strained at the iron bars. The fabric stretched, but it did not break. Finally, the iron bars bent under the strain, just enough for Mennet to slip through. He donned his tunic again and slipped out the door. Annis sat dumbfounded. "Can cloth truly bend iron this way? Would I lie to you? A small smile played across Lauren's lips. Yes, I would, and I have. She felt no obligation to tell Annis everything. Let the girl feel the frustration of hearing a bad tale. Annis shook her head. No, I cannot believe it. Else how could any prison hold its captives? Lauren shrugged. Believe it or not, as you will. I tell only an old tale. Believe it or not, as you will. I tell only an old tale. What value has an old tale without a kernel of the truth? What else are stories for? Annis folded her arms, pouting. Lauren had tired of her little performance. I am sorry to have disappointed you, but now I must away. I have had much water as I walked, and it begs leave of my company. I shall accompany you, said Annis, leaping to her feet. You? What happened to refined society where we must hide our bodies away? Annis shrugged. It grows dark, and we may take turns. Lauren grimaced, but she could do nothing. Together they tramped towards the trees, Gregor shadowing their footsteps. Once they had passed between the first two trunks, Annis turned to look at the captain. You have come far enough, she said. Gregor did not blink. Your lady mother commands me, Annis, not you. Your lady mother commands me, Annis, not you. And what will my mother think if I tell her that you leered at me like a lecher when I went to relieve myself? Gregor did not reply, or move a muscle, but when Annis turned and walked on, he followed a bit farther back. When they stopped, he fell out of sight. But he did not fool Lauren. She knew Gregor's men lurked all around them. She gave a grumbling sigh and prepared to do her business. We must speak, and quickly, hissed Annis. And for the love of decency, do not do that while I stand here. Her urgent tone drew Lauren's attention. What must we speak of? You are in danger as long as you stay here. Lauren snorted a grim laugh. You bring me no news. Your mother seems to see little value in any life, much less my own. Annis's eyes grew hard. I believe my mother keeps you here as a distraction. For what? I have heard her speak with Gretchen in the carriage. If questioned, my mother will tell the city guard that yesterday's constable pursued you north along the road, but if that should fail, they will likely search our wagons. Then mother will change her tune. Fucking clicking. Then mother will change her tune. I think she means to trade you in exchange for safe passage into the city. Lauren swallowed hard. It hurt her throat. Why, tell me. Do you think I resemble my mother? Whispered Annis, glaring at her. She has fed many men to the underworld, ever since I was a babe. I was raised to think it normal. Then one day I realized the truth, that murder was wrong and outside the king's law. My mother only escapes justice thanks to the depth of our coffers. I have sought escape from her ever since. Lauren could say nothing to that. She knew something of the desperation to escape home. Annis looked into her eyes. A stern, set expression crossed the girl's features. Will you do it then? If I help you escape, will you take me with you? Lauren nodded. I will. I swear it. And that is going to be it for now. I'm gonna end off for the day and nap until it is time for me to eat again. Yes, this sounds like a good plan. Thanks so much for coming and hanging out on the stream. Good to see you all. Good to see you, Miak Dread, Bumblebee and Clooney Man. Thanks so much for the bits today. I really appreciate that. And Sam, of course, Sam. I will be doing this again tomorrow, and I should be starting earlier tomorrow as well. 12 chapters, 28 left. Finish it in the next couple of days. Catch you next time. Thanks so much. Bye.